Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Somewhat Scholarly. My name is Alan Hibbard, and today we are answering the question, why does Bitcoin use proof of work? A lot of people are out there saying proof of work is a waste. It's a waste of energy, waste of time, waste of resources, and that there are so many other better consensus algorithms, consensus mechanisms. And, it really depends. Is a certain algorithm better than another? Well, it totally depends on your application. For example, this list over here, it's a whole bunch of alternatives. Well, we've got proof of work, proof of stake, delayed proof of work, delegated proof of stake, and a whole lot others, right? I think there's 35 of them. What I'll do is actually type those out and put them in the description in case you want to read them. I know it's a little small up here. And if you want to learn about them, copy and paste them into your favorite search engine, and you can discover all that there is. But what I'll say is that every single one of these has trade-offs. There's no best one. And so people who say, this particular, consensus mechanism is better than proof of work, it's sort of an incomplete sentence, right? It's an incomplete claim. If it's better than proof of work, you have to say it's better than proof of work for ... right? And if you're trying to do smart contracts, proof of work is nonsense, right? If you're trying to do, cross-border payments, proof of work is nonsense, right? Proof of work doesn't work for the vast majority of applications, but it does work for one of them, and it is the best thing for one thing. That's what we're going to talk about today. All right? So first of all, what is proof of work? I'm guessing a lot of you know what it is, but I'll just explain it briefly. Basically, you're proving that you've done work to create an asset. That's actually number one. It exists to create an asset. And so when we think of it in terms of Bitcoin, or really in terms of anything, the idea is you take a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of resources to arrive at one single thing, and then you show everybody and you say, look, I got the one single thing. And everyone can look at it very quickly, and they can verify if it's authentic with very little effort. So it takes you a lot of effort to come up with the one thing, and then everyone can verify that it's authentic with very easily, with very little effort. That's the idea of proof of work. And it's, in the case of Bitcoin, it's sort of an analogy to money and monetary systems in the real world, such as ray stones, gold, and feathers. And these are different monetary systems. So the idea behind each of these is that it takes a lot of work to go find a ray stone, like made of limestone. You got to find the quarry, you got to get the stone out, you got to carve it, and these things are huge. They're as big as people almost. Some are, some aren't. That takes a lot of work. However, you can bring it to somebody and say, look, I have a ray stone. And they can just look at it, maybe touch it, and say, okay, yeah, that's a real stone. You got it. Same thing with gold. It takes a lot of effort to find it, dig it up, purify it, whatever, meld it into a bar or a coin or whatever you're going to do. It takes a lot of effort, but then once you present it to somebody, they can say, yeah, that's real gold very quickly. It doesn't take a lot of effort to verify. Same thing with feathers. I'll just finish up with this one. There are certain tribes, I think still nowadays, modern era, but I may be mistaken on that use feathers as money. These tribes are very small. Like jungle tribes, and they hunt certain kinds of birds for certain kinds of feathers, and it takes a lot of effort to find these birds, to hunt them, to either use a bow and arrow or a blowgun and essentially kill these birds and then pluck out their feathers. But once you bring it to your fellow tribesmen, you can say, look, I have a feather, and they're like, yeah, that one's real. So the proof of work as a consensus mechanism in Bitcoin is designed to mimic what we already do in the real world with these types of natural resources, basically. So we can think of Bitcoin almost as a natural resource. So again, the idea of proof of work is it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to create this new thing, but it's very easy for someone to verify that it's real. That's the idea behind proof of work. So why does Bitcoin use it? It is a monetary system designed to mimic these other monetary systems, right? And each monetary system obviously has trade-offs. Some things are good, some things are bad. But there's also these other reasons here. Number two is to create stability and certainty. I'll just go through all these quickly and come back. Number 3, to improve decentralization. 4, to improve security. 5, to allow the network to right-size itself. It's self-regulating in that sense. Very closely related to number 3 with decentralization. The network right-sizes itself. It doesn't choose its size based on the effort of a centralized party. It chooses its size based on the effort of all people combined, right? Either using it or not using it. So very interesting. We'll come back to that in a second. So let me see here. We covered all this. Again, that'll be in the description if you want to learn about any of those things. What else did I want to say? Okay, monetary system. Let's look at the triangle. I think you guys have seen my earlier video on, what is the blockchain trilemma and what does decentralization actually mean. I'll put a link to that in the description. If you haven't seen that, I encourage you to check it out, because a lot of people don't understand that Bitcoin is trying not to be scalable. It has chosen to sacrifice scalability. That's one of the trade-offs that it acknowledges from day one. Bitcoin is saying, we don't want to be scalable. We want to be secure and decentralized. Almost every other crypto project is saying, how can we increase scalability, right? How can we have faster transactions, cheaper transactions, less energy required to process transactions? And those are all like good things. Everybody wants a faster transaction, a cheaper transaction, and less energy to make the transaction. Everyone wants that. So it's very obvious to do it. However, it's not the only way to get things done, and our society would benefit greatly from having one really good monetary system that does take a lot of energy, right? We don't need 2 or 20 or 200 Bitcoins. We only need one, and then we can have 2 or 20 or 200 or 2,000 different types of fiat, utility tokens, paper currencies, digital currencies, whatever. So anyways, go back and watch that video. I would argue that, most things that are trying to be secure and scalable are fiat. That might be a bit unfair to just use that term in a blanket sense, but I think it is actually easiest to understand if you kind of consider all of those things to be fiat, and then worry about the exceptions later. Whereas these things down here are money, so gold, silver, Bitcoin, and these other things I have over here, ray stones, gold, feathers. Oh, by the way, I will have a link to an article on ray stones. If you are curious about what these are, they're absolutely fascinating. So there's a link in the description to a PDF. I think it's about 13 pages, but it's a very interesting read. Very, very interesting. So I encourage you to check it out. Okay, what else we got? All right, let's go through our list. Let's go back to number 2. To create stability, certainty. We use proof of work in Bitcoin to create stability, certainty. It's not just that proof of work will automatically achieve stability or certainty. It's proof of work in combination with difficulty retargeting. I don't want to explain too many different things in one video, but basically, for those of you who don't know, as more and more people are mining Bitcoin, it gets harder to mine Bitcoin. So basically, the idea with proof of work is you're essentially trying to find a random number. Really is what you're doing, and you're just guessing and checking. So you're using computers, you're guessing thousands or millions of times a second. You're like, is it the number 12? No. Okay. Is it the number 8,193? No. Okay. Is it the number, you just keep guessing all these numbers, and eventually you find the right number, but you have no idea if you're close or not, or if it's higher or lower. So eventually you find the right number, but it gets harder and harder to guess the right number if more people are guessing. And conversely, if fewer people are guessing, then it gets easier to guess the number. So that's how the difficulty retargeting works. And it's designed so that somebody is going to guess the number approximately every 10 minutes. So it's really neat. I mean, that's like a completely brilliant feature. So the two things in combination, proof of work and the difficulty retargeting, create stability and certainty. And I have a quote here: uncertainty is the enemy of progress. This is so important. I don't know if anybody said that. I would have attributed it to them, but it's something I came up with. Maybe I'm plagiarizing somebody. I could have just Googled it and seen. But I've been thinking about, why is it so hard for certain people to make progress? And that includes people in the United States and developed countries, but also in developing countries. Like, what is the common denominator? Why is it so hard for people to make progress in their personal lives, in their careers, their family, finances, etc.? And I think it boils down to uncertainty. Uncertainty is the main thing holding people back individually and as a society. And if you think about it in terms of what we're experiencing now in 2020, coronavirus, some governments are shutting down entire economies, partial economies, changing their mind, open, shut. You can open on weekends, or you can only open and have 3 people inside, or you can open and do this, but then you have to close and do that, and da-da-da-da-da. And there's federal regulations, there's state regulations, there's so much uncertainty. If you're a business owner, it is almost impossible to make heads or tails of what's going on or what you think is going to be going on next week or next month or next year. It's so difficult. You don't know if you should hire people. You don't know if you should fire people. You don't know if you should renew your lease on your, office space or your storefront, or if you should shut it down. There's so much uncertainty. We don't know if the virus is going to mutate and become 10 times more deadly. We don't know if the virus is going to disappear and never come back. We just don't know. We just don't know. There's so much uncertainty. Not to mention, the presidential election is in, 8, 9, 10 days, something like that. A lot of uncertainty there. You don't know if the central bank is going to print another 10 trillion or zero, or if they're going to raise rates or lower rates. There's so much uncertainty. It's so difficult to know if you should invest. And if you think about it from the standpoint of a teenager going to college or something like that, you don't know if a certain industry is going to exist in 4, 5, 6 years. You don't know if it's going to be high paying or low paying. You don't know if you're going to be in a certain city if you work in a certain industry, or if you're going to have to move. When you have uncertainty, it's so difficult to make progress. And if we look at the most successful families, countries, societies throughout history, they have a strong rule of law. It's very predictable. They have a predictable monetary system. They know essentially how many currency units or monetary units exist. They know what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. They know the cost of doing each of those things in terms of a dollar amount or paperwork or the time that it's going to cost them, and so forth. So part of the beauty of Bitcoin with the proof of work and the difficulty retargeting is that everybody knows how many monetary units are out there, how fast new ones are going to be created, what the maximum amount is. There's not really an interest rate that's built into the system like there would be in the case of the Federal Reserve or other central banks, but it's known that there's no interest rate. It's known. It's not going to change every 10 minutes and so forth. So when you build a when you build a society on a stable monetary system like Bitcoin, you can make progress much more easily. All right, moving on. Number 3, to improve decentralization. We talked about that. Bitcoin is striving to be very, very secure, very, very decentralized while sacrificing scalability. So Bitcoin's just not going to be scalable. It just isn't. And trying to change the block size or the whatever, it's a fool's errand in my opinion. So anyways, the idea of decentralization is anyone and everyone can create new units. Anyone and everyone. So yeah, obviously, if you are a tech-savvy person and you're already a multimillionaire and you have access to cheap electricity and you're going to be able to mine Bitcoins better than someone who doesn't have those things, obviously. If you're born in 7 feet tall and, you have a basketball court in your backyard and your dad was a NBA player and you have a way better chance of making the NBA, obviously. But, even if you don't have those things, you can still make it. So anyways, and it's just like these things. Obviously, if you live next to a limestone quarry and you already know how to quarry ray stones, it's going to be easier for you. But anyone, anywhere in the world can go quarry them. Same with gold and feathers and yada, yada. You get the idea. So, of course, certain people will have natural advantages, but it's still decentralized. Anyone can do it. That's the important thing. And it's not just creating new units, by the way. It's doing anything on the network. So you can, on the Bitcoin network, you can be a merchant, a developer. You can do anything you want. You can start, you can stop at any time. You don't need permission. Obviously, there are natural advantages, but that's never going to go away. So, and very interestingly, in a lot of, I was going to say applications, but that's a misleading word. In a lot of contexts, such as education, employment, whatever, there are natural advantages, but people who are bothered by that often appeal to a central authority, right? Not a decentralized one, a central authority, to try to make those natural advantages go away. It's very ironic. It's very weird because the advantages will never go away. So anyways, food for thought. All right, moving on. Number 4, to improve security. Good behavior on the network is monetized. It's rewarded. Bad behavior is costly. It's punished. So if you behave well, this is an issue of incentives, the way it's structured with proof of work, with difficulty retargeting, the block reward. So every 10 minutes, right, if you're the one who finds that random number, you get the block reward and the fees of all the transactions. So the block reward started at 50 Bitcoins every block, every 10 minutes, gets cut in half approximately every 4 years, and now we're down to 6.25 at the minute. So good behavior is monetized. If you do everything like you're supposed to, and if you process all the valid transactions and so forth, you get the block reward. However, if you don't do that, you're punished. You essentially don't get the block reward, and or you compromise the value of the reward you get. So you might get those 6.25 Bitcoins, but those Bitcoins aren't going to be desirable by other people if you cheated to get them and if you lied. So what do I mean by bad behavior? I've got this box over here. So this is bad behavior relative to a monetary system like Bitcoin. So bad behavior is making promises. There are no promises in Bitcoin. Part of the problem with our current monetary system in the world, well, there almost isn't a monetary system. It's not a money system. It's a currency system. But the Federal Reserve and all the fiat system is that they make promises. Like, not only is each individual fiat note, a dollar, a euro, a yen, or whatever, not only is that itself a promise and not an asset, right? By the way, I'll put a link in the description to my video, What's the Difference Between Money and Currency? That's super good, super important to understand, and I touch on the differences between assets and liabilities. Essentially, money is an asset, and currency is a liability. It's a promise, right? It's an IOU, whereas this is a you owe me. Anyways, okay, making promises. Each individual currency unit is a promise, but also the bankers come out and say, we promise we're not going to raise interest rates until the year 2023. Okay, they say, we're not going to monetize the debt. We're not going to raise rates. We're not going to lower rates. We're not going to exceed more than $1 trillion. We're not going to da-da-da-da-da. So that is a form of uncertainty. I mean, they're pretending like they're certain. We've already decided we're not going to this, or we are going to this. And then they change their mind. So making promises is bad behavior in terms of a monetary system. You want your monetary system to have certainty. That way you can make progress. Uncertainty is going to get in the way. So making promises is bad behavior. Lobbying is another form of bad behavior. Oh, by the way, I should say you can't really make promises in Bitcoin, which is kind of the point. It's designed in a way that there are no promises. You could make a promise outside the network. Like I could promise you, hey, I'll give you a Bitcoin tomorrow if you whatever, and then I could break my promise. But that's not unique to the Bitcoin ecosystem. Lobbying. So obviously we see lobbying. There's a lot of discussion of that. Did either Trump or Biden or their family members, collude with foreign nations for whatever reason? I mean, who knows? They probably all did. It's very common. And the reason for that is because there's centralized power. Whenever there's centralized power, you will get lobbying. You will get people who say, here, I'll give you some money if you give me some of the power. And it may be official, it may be unofficial, it may be combination. But that's essentially bad behavior because everyone else on the network doesn't want that to happen. They want it to be run, legitimately in terms of the way they expect and the way that they wish they were certain of. So anyways, lobbying is really bad. But in a decentralized network, there's no one to lobby. You can't lobby for power. There is no central authority that can give you some of the power. So anyways, in some of these other cryptos that are trying to be scalable, they've sacrificed decentralization, and so there is a centralization of power. And so in theory, down the road, at some point, people could lobby and say, hey, put me put me on that list of trusted validators, or hey, trust me with the delegated proof of stake. Trust me to be one of the validators. Trust me to be this. Look how honest I am. Eventually it's going to happen if it hasn't happened already, right? And obviously it's depends on the coin and the network and the da. But the point is, if it's decentralized, there's no one to lobby, so you get rid of that bad behavior right away. Okay, and I'll go through these other ones very quickly. These are kind of obvious. Making fake units, like counterfeiting, right, which is kind of hard to do in some cryptos, but relatively easy to do in sovereign currencies. Spending fake units, so like maybe someone else made them, and then you have them, and then you spend them too, and whatever. Spending 2 or more times, so the double spend problem, which is also a triple spend, quadruple spend, right? If you can spend it twice, you can spend it as many times as you want, but it's all bad behavior. Approving fake transactions, blocking real transactions, so a form of censorship. If you do that on Bitcoin, you're not going to get the fee for the transaction, right? If you don't process real transactions, you're not going to get the fee. You could do that if you wanted, but there's really no incentive. And if you do process real transactions, it's monetized. You get the fee for it. So anyways, it's a nice alignment of incentives. Finally, rewriting history or truth in your own image. This is basically the idea of like a 51% attack, where you redo the proof of work from the last few blocks, however many blocks you can afford to do, basically. And you can effectively like undo transactions that people thought happened and so forth. That's very costly. So, you can do it, and we could have a philosophical debate of whether that's good behavior or bad behavior, because if the network allows it naturally, and if we all agree, if we all have certainty that the longest chain is the truth, right, that's how it works, you could argue that that's actually not bad behavior. It's actually playing by the rules. Sure, there's an argument to be made there. But the point is people won't like it, obviously. And it's very costly. That's the point. It's very, very costly. So I'm kind of classifying that as bad behavior here, and saying it's costly because you have to spend energy to do that. If you're going to redo the proof of work of the last however many blocks, it costs you energy. It costs you, hardware, software, electricity, blah, 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 in order to do that. So in that sense, it's punished. And then the final thing I'll say here is to allow the network to right size. We use proof of work to allow the network to right size, just like all these other networks here. You might not call them networks, but they're monetary systems. Anybody can go get a Bitcoin, a Raystone, a gold, a Feather, and anybody can stop. And there's no central entity that says, you know what, we need some more feathers around here. And, paying people, you 5 of you, go get some more feathers, or, the 10 of you, go mine some more Bitcoins. It doesn't happen. The beauty of a decentralized system, especially a monetary system, is that if money is all of a sudden more valuable in society, right? If people are willing to give up more for it, then that will attract more people to go create more money. And on the flip side, if money isn't quite as valuable for whatever reason, people will stop pursuing the money, and it will regulate itself. It's a free market. It's wonderful, wonderful to experience. So anyways, those are some of the reasons we use proof of work. I just have a couple things down here to wrap up with. Speaking of making fake units, I want to just give it an interesting data point here. You can ask yourself, how long does it take to make $35,000 US dollars? And I'll present this here. You tell me if you think it's fair. If you're the median American, right, so right in the middle, so that 50% of people would take longer, and 50% would take longer, 50% would take shorter. If you're the median American, it takes you 1 year to make $35,000. I picked this because it's the median annual salary. And you have to work for that, right? You go to work, or you do something that's valuable to society in order to acquire that money. Maybe you work 9 to 5 days a week, 40 hours, whatever, for all year, and you come away with $35,000. You essentially worked for that money, but it's currency. Want to know how I know it's currency? because the Federal Reserve doesn't have to work for a year in order to get the same money and spend it. The Federal Reserve works for 2 seconds. And this isn't like, oh, it only takes 2 seconds. It's not like, figurative. It's actually literal. Like every 2 seconds, I looked at the 2020, the amount of currency at the beginning of the year and then the amount of currency now, and then divided it by how many seconds exist, basically. And it reduces down to, they create $35,000 every 2.4 seconds, something like that, 2.4, 2.5. But it's about every 2 seconds. They're creating $35,000. They're not working for it. They're not working for it. But they're spending it as if it's a dollar that they worked for, right? You're going to work. You're going to work for a year to get this money. They're just going click, 35,000, click, 35,000. And they do this 24 hours a day, right? Not just 40 hours a week. They're doing it around the clock every 2 seconds. And they're spending it as if it's real money. But it's not real money, right? You can't just print ray stones or gold or feathers or Bitcoin. You have to work for it. You have to work for it. That's why Bitcoin uses proof of work. It's to stop this nonsense over here. This is completely impoverishing people. And it's why I don't hold dollars, because it's being devalued second by second by second by second by second while I'm awake, while I sleep, while I make videos, while I do anything. So that's terrible. I don't think it's fair, and that's obviously not a monetary system. That's complete theft. I mean, it's terrible. Last thing I'll say here is that the monetary systems in the United States have changed approximately every 30 to 40 years. And this comes from HSOM, Hidden Secrets of Money, Episode 2. I'll put a link to that in the description. It is an amazing video. It's an amazing series. There are 10 episodes now. This is Mike Maloney's work. Absolutely incredible. Basically, we use, and this is in the United States, we used gold until World War I. And then a bunch of countries started printing currency like crazy, even without the gold to back it up. Then between World War I and World War II, we had the gold exchange standard, but there were different rules in different countries, but essentially, we were using pieces of paper that were a claim check on gold. So you could go to the bank and say, all right, here's my paper note, give me the gold. However, there were rules that you couldn't redeem gold in quantities less than 100 ounces, 200 ounces, 400 ounces, depending on the country. And so that's a big bar of gold, like a 100-ounce bar, a 400-ounce bar. And in today's terms, at roughly $2,000 an ounce, that's $200,000 or $800,000. So you would have to go to the bank with that kind of cash in your hand. Like, here's $200,000 nowadays, or $800,000. Let me get the gold, please. And then they give you one giant bar like this. So we had a gold exchange standard, but effectively we didn't, because they created the rules in such a way that people couldn't get gold. So in other words, we had gold, then we had less gold, then we had less gold, then we had no gold. That's kind of the point. We went from having a lot of gold to less, zero. So this is a pattern. The reason I bring it up is because it's a pattern of central, not decentralized, but centralized authority figures taking away a good monetary system, little by little by little by little, essentially for their own benefit, right? It's good for them. Horrible, horrible, horrible for you and me. Horrible for citizens. Anyways, in Bretton Woods, basically all currencies around the world were pegged to the dollar, and then the dollar was pegged to gold. So, okay, sort of a gold standard, but sort of not. And in 1971, August 15th, Richard Nixon closed the gold window so nobody could redeem U.S. dollars for gold anymore. So ever since, we've had the dollar standard, almost 50 years now, where no currency in the world has been pegged to gold. And it's terrible. I can explain more in another video, I guess. But anyways, the point is we went from a lot of gold to less gold. We're getting away from monetary systems. We're moving towards currency systems. And some of you guys have seen the article that came out recently from the IMF. I will link to that in the description as well, calling for another Bretton Woods moment, right, which was here, which to me means we need another meeting to figure out how to steal from people. That's really what it means. And so I have a feeling that in 2020, 2021, they're going to come up with a new monetary system designed to create stability, right? And maybe, bank the unbanked and whatever other buzzwords they're going to use. But really, it's going to be a way to steal. It's not going to be a real monetary system, and whatever they come up with probably is not going to use work like these things here. But what you can do, by the way, is you can use a real monetary system for yourself, right? If you put yourself and your family on a gold standard, a Bitcoin standard, even a Raystone standard or a Feather standard might be better than a dollar standard. I don't know. Maybe those ones probably not. But anyways, you can put yourself on it. The whole point is that if it takes work to acquire it, it's going to be better than something that doesn't take work to acquire it. So hopefully that made sense. Hopefully you guys got something from it. In my next video, I'm going to answer the question, is Bitcoin bad for the environment? So we're going to explore effects on the environment, pollution, energy, that type of stuff. Should be exciting. So make sure you guys subscribe and you can see that video, and I will see you soon.